The Vash ship stampeded towards Earth after appearing from FTL. These massive ships, numbering a total of 4, arrived out of FTL only 3 times lunar orbit. The ships, all shaped similar to wedges, squared if you looked from the top to the bottom, but tapered down to the front to a semi-rounded nose. These would arrive on Earth in a total of 78 hours after the jump, and this made everybody nervous, as no one could hide it. The flashes in the night sky lit up Earth for just a moment, but it was enough to make everybody look up, and civilian astronomers were quick to notice them, and everybody freaked out. They were more freaked out at the incredible speed of vessels this size, yet it's clear at this immediate point that this is more of a blitzkrieg, not a communication. Though at first, when people thought, many hoped that this was a peaceful mission. Perhaps even a new trading partner, perhaps? A species that has come to break the current species of Earth out of its self-righteous hands that bind them. All that hope was dashed with the systematic destruction of the satellite network above Earth. Even the single space station that rotated around the Earth was destroyed, with only 2 crew able to reach a pod to stay alive. Aboard the pod, the crew members sent a message about they hope they survive re-entry. Perhaps they'll be able to see their families again, but this message was cut short as the pod was cut to pieces by energy weapons. On the surface, everyone saw this and freaked out. They'd all seen the movies. It's common knowledge to know that aggression without provocation at this point is simply a new species trying to clear out the indigenous vermin. They forget that in some cases, your vermin, your prey, can bite back hard. As flags are inverted around the world to show distress, around the world, another flag is raised right under it to show humanity will not simply drop to their knees and service this new whatever they might be. The yellow flag flaps in the breeze, saying a simple phrase that every human understood. Beneath the rattlesnake, the phrase, "Don't tread on me," is visible. A small symbol, but enough to remind all those on Earth that as long as they draw breath, they can defy anyone or anything. As these massive ships begin to reach the exosphere, they must maneuver themselves and place the heat shielding towards the planet. This places their ventral surface towards the planet. On top of this, they must actually close all their armored blisters, as the smaller weapons, usually point defenses, could easily get damaged or destroyed during this descent. As the bottoms begin to heat up, the atmospheric aircraft fly vertically towards these ships as though they're racing the ground-based missiles that are already on their way. Even civilian rockets begin to take flight on their way for a kamikaze mission towards these large ships. The enemy tries electronic warfare, trying to scramble everything, but that actually means nothing unless they're trying radar lock-on. But no, most of these are heat seekers. Or if anything is set on a solid trajectory, you're not breaking it off. The aircraft fired their missiles en masse as these ships slowly make their way down. The ordnance is already coming up. For 2 of these ships that are already starting to get above the continents, massive ships descend. Given their size, they're unable to avoid what's heading their way. Ships that are 2.6 miles long and 1.1 miles wide make them very, very easy targets. Targets that are now being hammered by increasingly larger ordnance the closer to the ground they get. At first, it's just the missile strikes from the aircraft tearing holes in the heat shields. These holes would begin to tear apart at the ship more and more and more as it descends, as the force and the heat bleeds through to the inside. Then, the heavier ground-based missiles strike, tearing even larger holes and forcing the ship struck to begin to veer off course or begin descending faster to try and get away from this heat. One of the country's heavy lift rockets hits directly into the center of one of these ships. The ship immediately begins to plummet and break apart. As it does, dozens of escape pods are launched out the sides, as well as many strange looking shuttles, yet around 30% actually explode on the way out, as the heat and pressure simply envelop them, and it's just too much. The ship tumbles uncontrollably and begins to break apart. The aft section ends up crashing into the edge of Hong Kong, basically annihilating the entire city as it explodes. The bow section drives into the mountainsides of Mongolia and ends up sliding down the mountain itself and right down to the edge of Russian territory. On the other side of the world, even before a civilian space rocket strikes the descending ship, it's ripping itself apart due to all the massive holes in it. The ship ends up turning itself towards the ground, bow first, and diving. At first, it looks like it's about ready to crash, or maybe it's a kamikaze attack. Yet once it gets to around 35,000 feet and starts to cool off, the ship raises the bow as hard as it can without ripping itself to pieces, and escape pods fly out of the side like flares on the side of a fighter jet. Shuttles and corvettes also begin to deploy as well, seemingly scurrying off this vessel like rats on a sinking ship, literally. All of which head to the surface as fast as they can. As they do, the pilot of the massive ship tries to actually land it, aiming for the shoreline close to where the escape pods are landing. This would put it right next to the coast inside the Gulf of America. And with this takes down two of the large ships. A third ship lands nearly uncontested in the center of an equatorial rainforest. It extends its landing struts on the way down, massive, lean struts that ended up sinking deep into the mud, as this was, in fact, the rainy season. The ship itself, being so heavy, sank past the bottom of the hull and ended up over 10 meters deep before it stopped sinking. With a mix of vegetation around its struts, and of course the suction left by all the water, the ship was not going anywhere. If they had even known how dangerous the area was, the place on Earth that they had landed right in the middle on the edge of the Republic of Congo, well, they might have preferred to get shot down. The final ship was able to land on the southern end of a continent in the southern part of the hemisphere. It was the only one that didn't receive any issues on the way down, didn't receive any issues on landing, and immediately started deploying its forces. Yet they had no idea that they were actually the last one. Very soon after this fourth ship landed, the third ship, the one in the rainforest, began begging for any type of aid. The ship itself was stuck. The crew was dying due to strange pathogens, poisons, venoms, and anything else that the center of the African rainforest can actually throw at them. They can't even deploy their heavy equipment to smooth out the area or anything, as the mud is so deep that the bare doors, if they can be opened, would simply flood the bays themselves, making all the equipment completely and utterly useless. Even as the captain, who was dying from malaria, was begging for any type of help, they suddenly changed their tone and they mentioned something else that was dangerous: the indigenous species. The captain of this stuck ship talked about how wave after wave of near impossible to halt munitions would slam into the ships. They would come in of groups of 30 and 45 at a time, and they would simply create massive holes in the ship. When they burst in, they would penetrate deep in, killing crew and taking out very delicate systems. The ship that had actually been uncontested with landing was on the southern half of South America and just didn't have the ability to simply get up and move without leaving their own people unprotected. Yet as they found a way to have enough of their forces on the ground and actually lift up their massive ship so perhaps they could lift their sister ship up, they heard the sound. It was sent out. It was a surrender. Now, Now the final ship was truly alone. As this invading species took large sections of land, they marveled at the tenacity of such an underdeveloped species. These strange, squishy bipeds had taken out so many of their own, yet the Vash still had the one ship. With this one ship, they had enough firepower to easily fight an entire continent, which is exactly what they were planning on doing, one continent at a time. They plan this even as they can see armies and navies amassing in all directions for a major assault. The Vash still believe they can break these, what are they called again? Humans? Claiming
this should be easy. They do not even utilize bioengineering to enhance themselves. They are a genetic accident.
not realizing that accidents happen. Yet once they decipher one of the strange messages, they listen close. They even read while they go through, and even the captain of the Vash invasion ship, Bugstepper, realized that they are in way too deep. He reads and listens to a conversation between several different human clans, each of these clans arguing about how they deserve to be looked upon more and more favorably than the others as they slaughtered more Vash. They even discussed the destruction of the ships, dominance revealed, and beyond your touch. One of the humans actually screamed out, "It does not matter how many you think were on that vessel. That still only counts as one." This is when they all paused. They thought, wait, do these creatures take pride in how many Vash they terminate? Wait, and there are millions of them heading towards his ship. The captain began to completely freak out and asked how fast they can load up the personnel they have and leave this planet. The advisors start looking into it, trying to figure out exactly how they can get people back as fast as possible, and that is when the alarms went off. The captain looked over and saw thousands of chemically propelled ordnances approaching. This is when the advisors yelled,
It's too late.
Immediately, the captain rushes over to the communicator and opens up a broad channel. No encryption. He wants them all to hear this. He simply says,
Attention, humans. This is the Vash. Abort your attack and let us set terms. Let us talk.
he repeats this message over and over again until the ordnance is less than a minute out. All of them prepare for impact, prepare to shoot down as many ordnance as possible. Then suddenly, 89% of all the ordnance approaching self destructs. The point defenses, robust in fact, and the anti air vehicles that are outside are able to take care of the rest, but just barely. The explosions actually rocked the ship as they got close enough where the burst was able to actually push this massive ship. The captain was on the verge of relieving himself on the floor as both of his hearts beat through his chest, and he had the receiver right to his ear as he heard a very mechanical voice come through. A voice that was translated in his own language, which simply said, "Let's talk." Hello, everybody. This is Syntax. Thank you for joining me today on this quick short story. And before I go, I need to say that today's winner is Alan Williams. And I also need to send out some special thank yous to the supporters of this channel, and they are Prozac and Pancakes, SS Demon, Brian Kemp, MTF Guard, Julius Boone, Douglas Scarborough, Erica Gem, Guardian Sage, Sir, and Hamish Drower. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I'll see you on the next one. This is Syntax, punching out.